Have you heard the story about the lady who went to her refrigerator? She opened the door and she saw a rabbit sitting on one of the shelves. "What are you doing in there?" she asked. The rabbit replied, "This refrigerator is a Westinghouse, right?" To which the lady replied, "Yes, it is." "Well," the rabbit answered, "I'm Westing." I guess everybody needs a Westinghouse. We all need a quiet spot, a place that we can get away to recharge our batteries and to re-nourish our spirits. Today we've talked about vacations. We brought vacation pictures to share. We take vacations so that we can get away from our daily routines and responsibilities, to relax and to have fun. What we choose to do on our time away depends on how we define the word relaxation. A few years ago, some of the Bethel and Faith ladies spent a weekend at Pine Lake on a retreat. In between teaching sessions, we had free time to spend doing whatever we wanted to do. I found it very interesting to observe how people chose to relax. Some took a nap. Some went hiking or kayaking. Some knitted or crocheted. Some played games on their cell phones. Some gathered in a group for fellowship. Remember, ladies? We had a good time. All of us doing different things, and yet all of it was considered relaxation. So rest can mean different things to different people. It's not how you choose to rest that's important. What's important is that you do it, and that you do it regularly. From Genesis all the way to Revelation, God tells us over and over again that our times of work and labor are supposed to be followed by times of rest. And just like the ladies at our retreat rested in different ways, all throughout Scripture, God gives us examples of what His rest looks like. One example of God's rest is called Sabbath rest. Genesis 2, verses 2 and 3 says, "By the seventh day God had finished the work He had been doing. So on the seventh day He rested from all His work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it He rested from all the work of creating that He had done." Now, how many of us are faithful in observing the Sabbath as a day of rest? I have to confess that I am not really great at it. I could do a lot better. Now, my intentions are always good. One thing that I've become pretty consistent about is I do not cook on Sundays. I try to plan my Saturday evening meal so that there's plenty of leftovers for the next day. My family knows that they are on their own for Sunday suppers. And the reason that I did this was so I could squeeze in an afternoon nap on Sunday. I love naps. And after having a very busy week, usually burning the candle at both ends, by the time I get home from church on Sunday, I am ready for lunch and a nap. Napping is observing the Sabbath, right? We're resting. Okay, so it's what happens between napping and bedtime that usually gets me into trouble. I look ahead at my calendar for the upcoming week. What meetings do I have? What do I need to prepare for? What days am I babysitting? What is waiting for me in the church office on Monday morning? I begin to look at my to-do list and then invariably end up at my desk in front of the computer working, trying to get a jump start on the week's responsibilities. Now, this isn't resting and it's not relaxing. It is not observing the Sabbath, keeping the day holy, spending extra time in prayer or scripture reading or talking to God or spending quality time with my family. Does this sound familiar to anyone else? Who would think that resting could be so difficult? So how can we get better at observing Sabbath rest? Number one, we can stay away from our computers and our to-do lists on Sundays or whatever other day you choose to observe your Sabbath. We can practice being better stewards of our time. Instead of waiting until the last minute, we can do tasks well ahead of time. Instead of just looking at this coming week, look ahead 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks and start your tasks early so that they will be finished well ahead of the deadline. Also, we can learn to say no once in a while and not to take on tasks that will overburden us. Now, retreat ladies, do you remember what we learned about not letting other people put rocks in our wagons because they become too difficult to haul around? If someone asks you to help with a task, or if you are considering adding something new to your schedule, prayerfully ask God, is this something that you want me to do? He will give each one of us the time, the ability, and the stamina to do the things that He wants us to do. If we are feeling overwhelmed by our workloads, perhaps we have taken on things that He doesn't want us to be doing in the first place. It's like pulling around a wagon full of rocks. When we allow other people, or sometimes ourselves, to keep putting more and more rocks or work into our wagons, we cannot pull them anymore, and we become weary and burned out. Sabbath rest. This time belongs to God. It is His special time with us, and we need to become good stewards of it, to guard it, because time with God is holy time. It's one of the 10 Commandments. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Now, God didn't rest on the seventh day after creating the world because He was tired. He rested because the job was complete. The world was perfect and God was well satisfied with it. The job was done. Now it was time to stop and enjoy what He had created. That is what God is modeling for us to do. He's saying, work hard the rest of the week doing the work that I've given you. Don't take on more than you can accomplish. Complete your tasks. Then, when the Sabbath comes, you can enjoy both physical rest and also rest in your spirits, knowing that the job is complete and now it's time to relax and enjoy the fruits of our labors. It's hard for our minds to be at rest when we know that there is still a pile of work to be done. We might take a day off for physical rest, but our minds are still in work mode. The secret to achieving complete rest is learning to limit our workload to a manageable size so that what we begin on Monday can be completed by Saturday. Now, I'm not saying that all tasks can be finished in 1 week, but I hope you understand my point. There needs to be an ending to our work because it is in the ending where our rest comes. We weren't created to work non-stop, never taking a break to rest. I saw a magazine article that illustrated this point quite well, using the analogy of the old Pony Express riders. Back in the Wild West days, mail was dispatched across the country by a relay system known as the Pony Express. Occasionally, an express rider would be attacked by Indians. Because his mount was stronger than the Indian ponies, the rider would spur his horse into a gallop to outrun his attackers before the Indians could reach him. Now, this scenario was repeated not too many times before the Indians got wise to what they were doing, and they realized they could not outrun this big, fast horse. So what they would do is, the first group would attack and they would chase him. And then, when their ponies got tired, a second group would be waiting, and they would come alongside, and then they would continue to chase him, which caused the Pony Express rider to spur his horse on faster and faster and faster. And this tactic was repeated until the Pony Express rider's horse would collapse from exhaustion. Sometimes we're like those Pony Express horses. We get one crisis solved, and then we're right back facing another. If it's not a child, who needs our attention, or in trouble at school. It's an aging parent who needs our help. If it's not an unhappy client, it's an expensive car repair, one stressful thing after another. It's like you live from crisis to crisis to crisis. There's no rest for the weary, we are told. And that is true, unless we plan balance into our lives. God created us for balance. He worked 6 days and he rested on the seventh. He created day and night. The day was for working, but the night was for resting. But modern humanity is not content with that. Our stores are now open 7 days a week, and some of them are open 24 hours a day. We are not created to go 24/7. God created day and night so that we would spend about 1/3 of our time sleeping. We were created to be in balance, for working and relaxing, for business and for family, for socializing and for spending time alone with God. Anytime our life gets out of balance, we pay a price. We need to carefully and intentionally protect our Sabbath rest. Another example of God's rest is quiet rest. We find this in our second scripture for today. In the 23rd Psalm, we read, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul." God knows exactly what we need because he created us. He built into us this rhythm of rest and work. One is just as important as another. Our spirits long for solitude, for silence, and for being in God's presence. Now that isn't automatic. It doesn't come easy. It requires discipline and practice to learn how to daily delight in God's presence. When we're with him, we're home. And that's where we find our rest. That's where we renew ourselves. How many times have you come home, and I come home from a vacation and say, I need to rest up from my vacation? It's not an extension of an already hectic pace. That's not what vacations are meant to be. They are meant to be times of rest. The Lord is our shepherd, and he knows that we need quiet rest. Sometimes he makes us lie down. Have you ever been struck with an illness? Or maybe ended up in the hospital flat on your back when there's nothing you can do except rest? During my years in nursing, I would see patients in their beds. They're balancing their laptop and their cell phones on their lap. They're trying to function as if their hospital room is their office. They just can't stop. Even when their doctors warn them that keeping up such a hectic pace is going to put their recovery in jeopardy. I believe that sometimes God uses these times to get our attention, to teach us to depend on him instead of ourselves. As our shepherd, the Lord will take care of us if we choose to follow instead of trying to do everything on our own. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. Did you know that sheep have a fear of moving water? I did not know that. And when I first learned this, I found it fascinating. It opened my eyes to a much deeper meaning of these words from Psalm 23 and an even greater respect for the shepherd. Sheep will not go into moving water, even if they are thirsty. They are extremely frightened of it because they cannot swim. If the water is deep, their heavy wool coats become saturated and the weight pulls them down to the bottom. It would be like you and I jumping into a deep river wearing heavy boots and our winter coat. Sheep will die of thirst before going near a stream of moving water. So the good shepherd must provide some type of still water for the sheep. Sometimes he makes sure that they graze early in the day when there's lots of dew on the grass. Sometimes he has to seek out a quiet pool, maybe somewhere on a mountain trail. Sometimes the shepherd has to build a small dam in a stream so that there is a place where quiet water will pool off to the side and sheep can come and drink feeling safe. The shepherd is constantly working to care for his sheep. And as we said, God knows exactly what we need and he knows our limitations. He will not lead us into destruction, but rather to restore us and our souls. Immediately after World War II, the Allied armies gathered up many hungry and homeless children and placed them in camps. They were abundantly fed and cared for, but at night the children were having trouble sleeping. They were restless and they were afraid. A psychologist suggested that when the children were put to bed at night, that they were each given a piece of bread to hold in their hands. They were hungry, they were given more to eat. It was provided, but this piece of bread wasn't for eating, it was just for holding. The results were amazing. The children went to sleep knowing that they had food for tomorrow. The assurance of a piece of bread in their hand took away their fear about tomorrow and not having another meal. They began to sleep peacefully. Our relationship to God through Jesus is like that piece of bread. We are assured that God will be there tomorrow and every day to provide what we need for our journey. This gives us great peace and strength and joy. It provides the still waters in our lives and saves us from drowning in a great sea of stress and exhaustion. Quiet rest, knowing that God is always with us and always taking care of us. This is the type of rest that restores our souls. Another example of God's rest is recovery rest. Recovery rest isn't like taking a vacation. It's more like a short sabbatical. It's that in-between time that we need to recover after we complete one task before we start another. For example, you've just finished 9 months of teaching school, maybe closer to 10 months after you add in the preparation time and the things you have to do at the end of the year. It's time for some recovery rest. So instead of not taking a break and jumping right in and teaching summer school, you take the summer months off to rest and relax and give yourself a complete break from school before the next semester begins. That's an example of recovery rest. After Jesus fed 5,000 people, so many were following him that he and his disciples didn't even have time to eat. So Jesus told the disciples, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. We see many times in Scripture where Jesus is teaching and preaching and healing, and then he goes off to a quiet place to pray and spend time with God to renew himself both physically and spiritually. A year ago at Faith, we began to offer growth groups. These happen over 4 semesters, winter, spring, summer, and fall. There are Bible studies, there are Sunday school classes. We've had Bible classes on biblical finance, health and wellness, exercise, prayer, current events in the Bible. We even have one group that meets on a few Saturdays during the semester and goes to the movies and has lunch together. Now, even though these are all very good things to attend, it can become very tiring going semester after semester. So we encourage people not to take more than 2 semesters in a row before they take a break. That's both for the leaders and for the students. It works well because it allows people to say, "No, I'm sitting this semester out," without having any guilt. It's helping us to learn and practice recovery rest. And the final type of God's rest I'd like to share is eternal rest. Revelation 14:13 says, "Then I heard a voice from heaven say, 'Write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes,' says the Spirit, 'they will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them.'" Now, eternal rest is usually associated with going to heaven after we die, but it is more than that. It is also the reassurance that we have right now that our reward is already here. It's the knowledge that we will experience eternal joy when creation is renewed and restored, when all sin is removed, when the world is made perfect again. Having that knowledge right now inside of us gives us peace in our souls, no matter what happens. From now until the day we die, we have something so much better waiting for us in the future. There was a young woman who had been diagnosed with a terminal illness and told that she had 3 months to live. As she was getting her things in order, she asked her pastor to come to her home and discuss her final wishes. She chose songs and scriptures for her funeral service and the clothes that she wanted to be buried in. The pastor was preparing to leave when the young woman suddenly remembered something. "One more thing," she said excitedly. "This is very important. I want to be buried with a fork in my right hand." The pastor looked at the young woman, not quite knowing what to say. "This surprises you, doesn't it?" she said to him. "Well, to be honest, I'm a bit puzzled by your request," said the pastor. The woman explained, "My grandmother told me this story, and I have always tried to pass it along to those whom I love and those who are in need of a bit of encouragement. In all my years of attending socials and dinners, I always remember that when the dishes of the main course were cleared, someone would always lean over and say, 'Keep your fork.' It was my favorite part of the meal because I knew that something better was coming, like some velvety chocolate cake or a deep dish apple pie, something wonderful and with substance. So I just want people to see me there in that casket with a fork in my hand, and I want them to wonder, what's with the fork? And then I want you to tell them, keep your fork, the best is yet to come." As long as we are on this earth, we are to have an active faith. Jesus says, "Take up your cross and follow me." He tells us to be active in ministry because serving is a major part of our faith. But he also warns us not to let our lives get off balance. We are not to be so busy doing good that we neglect our need for leisure, for rest, for family and friends, and most importantly, time alone with God. So keep your life in balance. Remember to seek God's rest. When we do that, we will find the green pastures and the still waters where we will be nurtured and cared for